Hey guys, so I wanted to create a little short lecture video for chapter 2. The few things I want to go through here. In chapter 2, we're really looking at the Constitution, some of the foundational things. We don't really have a lot of time to go into the early documents such as the Magna Carta, 1215 with King John back over in Europe, and then we also have the Mayflower Compact, and there's some other documents along the way that have led to or been some stepping stones to get to where we're at today with the Articles of Confederation, then turning into our U.S. Constitution. So I'm going to go over a little bit of that here on my dry erase board. I'm still waiting for my IT guys to get me a camera set up in my office, so I am here in my home. But anyway, we get to the point in our nation's history where we have the Articles of Confederation. Articles of Confederation, that's our first governing document. The Declaration of Independence was just a document that was created to establish the separation of the colonies from Great Britain, from the mother country. So, the Articles of Confederation is our first governing document. It had a lot of weaknesses. Okay, in those weaknesses, we had no executive branch. There was also no military or national military. There was also no judicial branch, really. It just mainly had a legislative branch, and the other two branches of government had not been developed yet. I'll go ahead and stand over here so I can write a little better. So this is no, no, and no. States were coining their own money, making their own currency. This was an economic problem. It was really hard for the different states to do trade because they all had different money, and it was hard to do the exchange rate and figure out exactly who was owed how much. There was no taxation, which some people like that idea, but you really you could not do very much federally with no taxation, and some states were footing the bill for the majority of the states, and again led to friction and conflict, so that was another weakness. So no executive, no judicial, no national military, states were making their own money, no taxation, all issues that became things that they really had to deal with. They come to the U.S. Constitutional Convention in 1787. Here there are three main issues. Economic issues are important here too, but at least government-wise, politically-wise, we have three main issues that we're looking at here. That being, I guess we could just go ahead and say number one, representation. Number two, the issue of slavery. Number three, voter qualifications. Voter qualifications. Representation. With the Constitutional Convention, you already have problems, some issues with large states versus small states. This is always, even today, an issue that we have. And so with representation, the small states were worried that the bigger states, and this is population-wise, they were worried that they would have more say in how the government run and operated. So they came up with a bicameral legislature. Bicameral. And so you have the House of Representatives and then the Senate. Okay? So both of these are under bicameral legislature. House of Representatives provides that people get representatives for their state based on population numbers. So larger population numbered states get more representatives. Okay, um, smaller states get smaller numbers of representatives, and so there's some squabbling there. But we do see some things balanced out with the Senate, in that everybody gets, each state gets two senators. Two senators there. Okay. So that kind of dealt with representation. In addition, slavery kind of goes with the representation, because while they were bickering about slavery and right or wrong, another major thing that came up with the Constitutional Convention is the Southerners wanted to be able to count their slaves as part of their population, which is odd because the Southerners also wanted to say that their slaves were only property. The Northerners said, whoa, 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 you can't have both. You're going to have to either call them people, or you're going to have to not let them count. So they went back and forth on this argument for quite a while, and finally they came to the 3/5 compromise. Okay, so this means that for every, it's kind of every 3 out of 5 slaves, would count toward a person, and that would count toward representation. Okay. Your book is going to have more specifics on these things, but these are some things I definitely want you to pay attention to. Slavery, it's still a weird scenario. Certainly not a solution, but just more of a compromise. A lot of our government is a compromise in getting to a next step, to the next level. Okay. Then another issue they were dealing with was voter qualification. Who gets to vote? And they had a lot of arguments over that. They basically said, well, it needs to be men with property, because they felt that if you had property, then you had more skin in the game, like you had more reason to care about what the government was doing. But the question is how much property? Would it be the property is the size of your house, or the size of your town? Okay, or something several acres. And so that became a question. And then some might have been early mercantile or merchant type individuals, and so would their just their shop, if they were a shoe cobbler making shoes, and would their shop constitute as property? So those are a lot of questions. And then some people were more financial and they just had money. So does that count as property? There are lots of questions. Well, they couldn't decide on voter qualification, so they kicked it on to the states, to let states decide. So basically, the main thing you have to have to be able to vote is to be a citizen. And you can be a citizen by being born in the United States or go through a naturalization process. That's number one step. After that, there's a lot of give and take on how elections are run, when registration for voting takes place, when these primaries, the elections before the November general elections, when those take place. All that can be decided by the state governments. And so that's because the Constitutional Convention, they can come to an agreement, so they send it on to the states. Okay. I need to go back and remind you, if you haven't already studied this in your textbook, that with this bicameral system that they established out of the Great Compromise, that we studied, you would study or look in your textbook to see about the New Jersey plan. And the Virginia plan. Both of these were mashed together to establish our Great Compromise. Okay? Don't confuse Great Compromise with the 3/5 Compromise. Don't get those confused. Those are things you're going to need to be aware of as you get ready for some of your testing. Okay? Constitutional Convention established representation. It also established our separation of powers. So we have the executive branch, the legislative branch, and judicial branch. Okay, those three branches, each one has specific powers that we'll study more about when we get into the chapter on executive, the chapter on legislative, the chapter on judicial. So each of those we'll get into those a little bit more specifically. It is important to know, at least for the executive branch, right here, we do have what's called the Electoral College, and you're going to be writing about this if you do Friday in your discussion. The Electoral College is a system that's set up for choosing our president. It again goes back to a representation system, where with the House of Representatives, the number of representatives the state gets plus the number of senators they have leads to the number that each state gets in electors with the Electoral College. Okay, so in the United States, each of our states, we have 50 states, each of our states get a number of electors when it comes to the presidential election, which occurs every 4 years. And states like Texas, California, New Mexico, those states have larger populations, and so they're going to have larger numbers in the Electoral College. Now, something that you should be reading and studying up on with your discussion that you will submit on Friday is this electoral process is designed in a republic system, but functions as a use with the democracy that we practice in the United States. Okay? It's going to be shocking to some people that they understand, or when they realize that in presidential election years, we do not directly elect our president. We elect people to be our elector in our state. So you're going to have this person representing thousands of voters, and the majority of what they choose or who they choose and vote for, if we go back to the 2016 election, the majority in Texas, all throughout the state, voted for President Trump. So with President Trump carrying all those voters, the elector then goes and casts that vote when the Electoral College group meets. And they meet, I believe it's in December, early December. So, some states split up their Electoral College. You'll likely read that too. Some states split up their Electoral College votes, like Nebraska. They have, one candidate can get maybe 4 of theirs, and another candidate gets like 6 of theirs, depending on who gets the majority of those votes. And that's an interesting system to use. The separation of powers, we have that as a way to keep a balance and check on these different branches of government. Something you want to be sure and read about, study about there in your chapter. But these are the main highlights that we want to hit out of chapter 2. Don't forget, keep up with your quizzes. Check for your discussion assignments that are due. And be sure and communicate with me if you've got any concerns or questions about how things are working within your Canvas course. Okay? Have a great day, and I'll be back to see you soon.